private practice, does it change the way you manage patients that have been in long-term pain? You change?
Interestingly, I don't see many long-term pain patients in my practice.
Oh. Yeah. Or, so maybe then at more subacute or acute patients that you are aware that there may be some risks for chronicity and things, do you then manage them differently?
I think, if there are apparent risks to chronicity, then I do try and get in on those as early as possible.
And how do you do that?
Well, say for example, if somebody's saying, well, I can't do that, if we go back to that example, I might try and find ways that, for example, I had a chap yesterday who I have known for a long time, and I see him like every 3 or 4 years or something like that. He'll come back with something, and this person had a knee problem, and he's saying, I can't run. I said, okay, well, what have you tried? He said, well, every time I try to go for a run, I get pain, and so I don't go. So I said, well, what about walking? How's that? Well, walking's fine. Okay, well, how amenable would you be to, say, for example, walking, say you walk 3 kilometres, could you introduce a short run, 20 metres or something like that?
Yeah, so it's
and then see how it feels, and what's the minimum amount you can do where you get no reaction in your knee afterwards. And then talking about how joints like movement and health of cartilage, and how inactivity is perhaps not the most helpful way forward, and if you want to do more, as I.L. Lederman says, do more, but you have to we talk about gradual, so it's just talking about it really, and finding ways in which the things that they want to do can be introduced in small increments.
So that a graded exposure approach, does that work with most people?
Well, we'll see in this case.
Yeah.
We'll see. Because people approach things, people go at things, and so this is another thing I do. We talk about how do you approach it when you go. See people in the gym, if I do this really hard, I'll have great big muscles, and of course they go away and they're aching, and then they don't go for days. Yeah. And you say, so I often talk to people about when you go and you do this, how do you go? Do you go slow? Do you take your time, or And so I'm interested in people working with their bodies and not going against them. So being perhaps more mindful about how does it feel? And I talk about when we slow movements down, there's a lot of stuff happening in your body between okay and ouch. Yeah. And
slow it down.
Slow it right down and feel, and feel, get to know what your body feels like at that point before you get to ouch and it's too late. So it's about promoting exposure, promoting awareness, body awareness.
And so when, and I can see that side, but if you're getting a patient to focus so much on how they're feeling, is it not kind of then focus them in on a negative way as well? You see some patients sort of being so kind of aware of their...
Oh, you see. Well, I'm not thinking, I'm thinking about before you get to the pain.
Right. Yeah.
Not focusing on the pain.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging activity, but noticing how their body feels, before it's too late. So many people get to that point where it's too late and something's happened.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity to do stuff in between.
And you support them in finding that kind of middle ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I believe I do, because I'm seeing them in a bubble. That person's there in the room, I'm in the room, we're talking, we're doing stuff. Once he leaves and he goes off, I've got no idea what he's getting up to.
And do you get them to explore movement in the clinic room, so you do much more of an active role rather than passive?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. If it can be, if that's what provokes, because it could be after a run of 20 minutes, therefore it wouldn't be much use, would it, in a clinic setting to do that? But
I can't get them to run for 20
Like
minutes because I don't have a treadmill.
But if it's bending, for instance, then you'll kind of support them with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might ask them to say, well, you know, how does it feel? How does it feel when we go that far? So yeah, exploring movement.
Yeah.
I mean, it could just be something simple. Getting somebody to notice what it's like to open up your hand really slowly. Or it could be something like bending your arm or turning your neck. It doesn't matter where it is in your body, it's about just noticing whatever's there.
Okay, that makes sense. And so in terms of low back pain, you were mentioning, well, another pain, but particularly low back pain, things like fear avoidance and catastrophising about, you know, bending and things. What other factors do you see as barriers to recovery, the psychosocial factors in sort of low back pain cases?
Where barriers to recovery might be where people seem fixed on, I don't know, here's a scan, I've got this problem, you know, and I'm, you know, what happens if this, you know, if this comes back, you know, or I wish I'd never done that, you know, like unhelpful thoughts about things that have happened where you can't do anything about that.
Yeah, so unhelpful thinking.
Unhelpful thinking.
Was it Fran that just posted that? That was really useful. That chart she put up about unhelpful thinking. I'm going to print out and use that. I think that's to kind of be aware of those unhelpful thinking styles in patients.
Yeah,
is good.
So when a person's having those unhelpful thoughts, and you know, you can say, well, you know, I can understand why you're having those thoughts and why you worry about that, but I'm just wondering in terms of where you want things to be, how do those thoughts help you?
Yeah.
You know, and what happens when you get caught, you know, if you get caught up in those thoughts, what happens to you then? So,
do you feel equipped to be able to talk about more the psychological aspects of what's going on? Because
well, I don't think of it as like psychoanalysis.
No.
I'm just asking them, you know, so I might say, you know, you worry about your back and, you know, and why wouldn't you? Because this has happened. I can understand that totally. But when you think along those lines, you know, what happens for you then? I'm not attempting to analyse, but what I want them to do is to perhaps notice where do those thoughts take them. And okay, you know, so say you followed that particular, say you got caught up with that particular thing, you felt a certain way, where does that take you in relation to, you know, how do you want things to be?
So you don't feel as
so I'm not trying to analyse them or judge them, or I'm just wondering, you know, what happens when they do that.
Okay, so it's more of a question mark.
It's a question mark, yeah.
Rather than trying to,
you know, not trying to say, you know, you are obviously in love with your mother and you're jealous of your father, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not psychoanalysis.
Okay. Do you think that all the contributing factors you see are modifiable, or that you can modify or help modify them?
I try. I mean, with some people are so fixed in their ways, and no matter how hard I try, they're not amenable to change.
So it's a cognitive change then, or acceptance. Do you think they need to accept that there's other things going on to be able to move past that barrier?
What do you mean by accept?
That if they have like let's say for instance the MRI scenario where they equate tissue damage to pain, and you maybe talk that through with them and indicate that actually it does not necessarily correlate, and maybe there's other things that are contributing. If they put up a barrier to say, actually, well, no, it's clearly because, look, I've got a prolapsed disc, that's where my pain's coming from. If they can't make that leap to maybe other social or psychological factors, then that will get better.